where do you start with that race? Honestly, that was probably the longest Grand Prix after a very, very long time. I mean, so much happened. Safety car, red flag, 2 red flags, virtual safety car. We had everything. Lap 1, let's get right to it. Brilliant start from Russell on the line. He managed to get past Max Verstappen, who was really careful and cautious on that first lap. And he said afterwards he had too much to lose, and the Mercedes clearly had nothing to lose. And it really shone, to be honest with you. And Max was very careful, clever. I mean, he knew he had the car and the pace to win that race, so it was no point getting an incident with the 2 Mercedes. But yeah, didn't expect them to be a 1-2. He was so cautious out of the first corner with Verstappen that Hamilton made a pass into turn 3. He was very bit unhappy about that, to be honest, saying that he ran him out wide. But oh, come on, you can't complain at that, Max. I think you've done it to everybody on the field. So I thought that was fair racing, to be honest with you, even though I might be a Hamilton fan slightly. But yeah, that was the lap 1, and then we had the Charles Leclerc being tagged and taken out. I think it was by Lance Stroll, unfortunately, and that was the end of his race at the very first corner, and that caused the first safety car. Yeah, not sure if that was really. It probably had to be done, that one, didn't it? To be fair, out of all of them. Albon was running really well. He got a brilliant start. He was up into 6th place. Magnussen made up 3 places as well. But Verstappen obviously didn't really get away well, and he dropped the first place to Russell on the line. He made a brilliant start, and that was probably as good as it got for George Russell. Then on lap 7, the safety car came out. Albon lost it in a strange position. I don't know if he just got his tyres dirty. He hit the wall, and then we had a safety car because of gravel. I mean, they had already taken a lap around the safety car, and a quick broom and brush would have really got that swept up and the race back underway. But before that, Russell pitted under the safety car, which was the right strategy at the time for him, but then the red flag came out, and that really lost him a lot of position. He came out like 7th, I think, after that. And he was going to struggle from there onwards. Lap 18, though, was the end of his race. Looked like an engine issue for him, and that caused the virtual safety car. At that stage, we had Verstappen leading from Lewis Hamilton. After the safety car restart, or the red flag restart of 1, Hamilton managed to keep his place in first, kept Verstappen behind him, but then that was it really. It was just a matter of time. It was so easy for Verstappen. I mean, when he made the move, which was more than halfway around, about turn 11 or turn 10, from there to the end of the lap, he made 2 seconds. I mean, that's the kind of pace that the Red Bull really had. He was comfortably, but thereon he made a gap and then just kept it steady at about 10 seconds from Lewis Hamilton did Verstappen for the majority of the race. We then just got Perez getting through the field, and he managed to do all right. He was up into about 7th. He was struggling to catch up to Norris, who did a brilliant race in the McLaren, but did finally make that move, and then was gathering some pace up at that point. Gasly was the lucky one on that one. He was up into like 4th place after the first red flag restart, so he really did well, and he was really keeping it up there with everybody. Everybody was on the hards at that stage, so the strategy was out the window, apart from the ones that got unlucky with the pits under the first safety car. But yeah, after that it was all on the hards, and it was a matter of who, or would the hard tyres really make it to the end, and it was comfortable in the end, to be honest with you, for pretty much everyone. It was a bit of time and management going on. It looked like we might get a bit of a battle between Alonso and Hamilton, but that really didn't happen, unfortunately. Hamilton just had enough pace in him and he just made it count when he needed to. Kept that gap to above a second, so Alonso couldn't get in the DRS zone. Had he got into that DRS zone, I think we would have seen a battle then, but it was just hard for him to get close enough into that gap. Hamilton managed that well. And then we got the red flag again on lap 54, and that was Kevin Magnussen. He hit the wall, which is a strange maneuver. I don't know if it was just because of the way the light was coming down and he must have just missed where the corner was, and that caused a safety car with sort of 3 laps to go, and it looked like we get the 2-lap sprint race right there at the end, which was looking really exciting. Everybody came into the pit lane, stopped and got onto the soft tyres, and then we got the crazy lap 55 restart. At that stage, we'd already had Russell out, Leclerc out, Albon out, Magnussen out. But then the restart came, and it was a chance for Lewis Hamilton. Could he get his first win? I mean, he'd been brilliant off the start for the first ones. Verstappen was not, well, he'd been passed almost on the first 2 starts, so he was under a bit of pressure, and you could really tell at the restart he was pointing right up at Hamilton. And to be honest, I've seen a few clips where he looks like he's ahead of the yellow line of the pit box, where you need to stay behind. So I don't know if there's any safety car infringement on that one. I've not seen anything pop up yet, but there's a lot of photos and pictures you can take of yourself, and he was quite far away over to one side, and we've seen penalties for Ocon and Alonso. But with all the chaos going on, has that one been slipped under the radar? I mean, I'm not sure. If Mercedes get hold of them pictures, they might make something of it. But to be fair, Verstappen was solid despite all that drama. He kept his head, he held off, and then we had chaos behind us. It just all imploded. Carlos Sainz into turn 1, clipped coming out of the turn 1, just managed to, thought he'd left enough space for Alonso, but just tapped him on his rear wheel, and that spun Alonso around. Stroll went off, and at that point it was Verstappen, Hamilton, Sainz in 3rd place. Hulkenberg managed to get into 4th place with all the chaos behind. The 2 Alpines took each other out. It was a really poor start from Gasly, locked up, went off. And then joined the track, and then as he was joining, I don't know if it's just because there was a lot of cars going off, Perez went off. He was near last on that restart as well. So it was looking like a crazy finish, and we had about 6 cars off and out at that point. We've only got 12 cars finishing at the end of the race, so it was absolutely mayhem. But it was probably the most scruffiest restart we've ever seen. I think because it was just 2-lap, and it was so much riding on that first sort of corner, second and third corner, that you really had to make the pressure there. If you'd got them positions there, you know, you were looking on for Hamilton for a win. For anyone else, you're looking at a podium. Perez could have really jumped up the grid at that point. But yeah, and then for some reason we had because of the Alpine incident, there was another red flag thrown almost straight away. But with there just being 1 racing lap after that, and then we had chaos for about half an hour. Nobody knew where anybody would line up. Alonso, the clever head, was right on the radio saying, "Look, we've had this in Silverstone. We've not, we should have a count back, and he'll keep his 3rd place because he was well out at that stage." And it's worked out really well for him. After all that, at one point it did look like Hulkenberg might get his first podium with the potential of Sainz getting a penalty for that first lap incident with Alonso. That prediction of mine didn't quite work out. It was so close. I thought we were going to get another one there. But yeah, that didn't happen. I mean, that was really poor. Should have just finished. If we're going to do all that mess around and just say, actually, we're going to have a lap that counts up as a lap but doesn't exist, because everybody just went back to the starting grid positions effectively, but for the cars that got taken out on that first corner. So that's how they restarted, because they said they couldn't do a count back. But it's quite clear from the pictures of where everybody was. Just carry on and make their way around. Everybody's, as safety car, no one really passed on the safety car, and if they did, you'll hear drivers on the radio saying, "Oh, you passed on the safety car," and you can sort that one out in the 10 minutes or the few minutes that you've got while the safety car makes its way around. And it was so close to the end. They knew there was going to be no racing lap, so we had a racing restart without what should we say, without any racing, and a lap. Sainz got a penalty for a lap, an incident which effectively didn't affect Alonso anymore, and we were being told that racing incidents on the first lap aren't going to be so harshly treated, but he gets a 5-second penalty for that. I can see Ferrari potentially making an appeal on that point, because he's now finished 12th after his 5-second penalty was announced. He was 5th or 4th, behind Alonso when that penalty was given, and the restart order was positioned. This is going to be a long video, sorry, but it was just chaos. Why did you couldn't just carry on and finish it as they did? Every car was in the order that they were, pretty much. It just didn't make an awful lot of sense to me on that one. But yeah, that's where we are. Unfortunately for Hülkenberg, he didn't get his first podium, but he got points for Haas. So let's run through the teams, as it is team talk. How about Max Verstappen for Red Bull? As I say, won the race. He was easy on the DRS, and then made that 2 seconds on Hamilton in half a lap. Just shows the pace advantage that the Red Bulls really have, and they were comfortably had about 3 or 4 tenths to half a second in it. But it was a really close race from there backwards. Perez did well. He managed to get up to 5th place. It was a good recovery in the end for him, but I think he did get lucky with the way the restart order worked out for the red flag, the second red flag restart, because he was off track and would have been last, so that would have been a disaster for him. And he passed the cars you would expect him to pass, but he got up to about 7th, but there struggled after that. Had a tough battle with Norris. Norris did really well, had a brilliant race he did actually. The Ferraris, disappointed for Leclerc. He was out in lap 1. Sainz had the podium in his pocket at one point for taking out Sainz, so potentially an unfair advantage for his little tap on Alonso, but then got the 5-second penalty, which I think was still harsh on him, despite, because Alonso got his position back. There was no jeopardy there really for Alonso, and he's finished 12th, so really poor weekend for Ferrari in terms of any points. Just nothing falling right for them at the moment. Hopefully we can build some momentum now. We've got a long break and we can go from there. The Mercedes, Hamilton started 3rd, got up to 2nd after passing the Red Bulls. Really made a fight of it, of what they could. Had solid race pace, to be honest with you. Comfortable, held off the Aston Martins, and they didn't bring any upgrades this weekend, but what really happened and why they've said they've got to the front is because it might be track specific slightly, but they just managed to get the car set up right, and if they can do that, they are in a decent position. So not as bad as they've kind of made out, but could we seeing what we saw last season, where they won in Brazil and you thought the car was brilliant, and they rocked up and they're a second behind the Red Bull. So not going to really read too much into it, but a good weekend for Hamilton. Rosberg, after his brilliant performance in qualifying yesterday, and he was in the lead of the race, got screwed over with the red flag, unfortunately for him, but that's just the way it falls sometimes. He pitted before that came out, and that really cost him. And then he had the engine issue, and that was a rare reliability problem for Mercedes. He was out on lap 18. Disappointing on one side of the garage, but a brilliant result for Hamilton. P2 on the podium for him. Aston Martin, they'll be very, very happy with the result in the end. Third and fourth, Alonso and Stroll, another podium, brilliant points for the team. Although it did implode at that restart. Alonso had spun and Stroll was off the back somewhere. Stroll got stuck in a DRS train, but did good to finish in P4. Alonso couldn't really get into the DRS zone of Hamilton. Almost felt like he was keeping some sort of tyres in the pace, of trying to force Hamilton use his tyres, but didn't really quite happen that way for him. But yeah, what can we say? Alonso, he's always got a thinking brain out, even after that sort of incident, and he was spun round and at the back, sort of straight away saying, look at Silverstone, what happened? Check the rules, we'll have a count back and I should keep that third place. I mean, he's probably one of the only few drivers to go that far after an incident, saying, getting his angry out and then saying straight on it, say like, oh, look at this. His brain is always one step ahead, and what makes him absolutely fantastic. McLaren had a brilliant race, to be honest with you. They've shown their good race pace. They'll be really happy with their weekend. Lando Norris did a brilliant job holding up into P8, held off who did he hold off? He had good racing. He held off Hülkenberg for a while. He had made a good move and tracked him, managed to pass him, got into P8. Did well with trying to keep Perez behind him for a little while, but that was a battle he was really going to struggle with. But a solid result, finished in P6 in the end. Piastri gets his first points at his home race, finished in P8. It looked like he'd finished just outside the points before that second red flag turned up. But he'll be very, very happy with that, despite how it comes. It's points, it's what counts, it's numbers on the board. Alpine, the race just imploded for them. Took each other out, but on the bright side, they had really good pace. Gasly was brilliant. He was up into fourth place, really held off Carlos Sainz really, really well. Just couldn't right at the end. Sainz got the move done. It was a brilliant move by Sainz, to be honest with you. But it was a solid race. He kept in the DRS zone then of Sainz for a long time. And really good race for him. He'll be really happy with that, considering it's only his third race for the Alpine team. Ocon kind of struggled, but he was in top 10 at one point, and then he was 10th until this restart, and then Gasly's poor start, then just where they ended up on the track, joining up the second corner. And they took each other out. Massively disappointing, especially when there was good points on the table for the team, especially where they were. Haas, a bit of a mixed one for them. K-Mag had a poor weekend. He was out though on lap 54 he clipped his tyre and broke that, and that caused the red flag safety car. But Hülkenberg, brilliant race from him. He was up into fourth, like I said, at that restart. I'll be disappointed. I nearly had my race prediction right of him getting his podium position. Finally, it was, so close, but then they did this recount back that on a lap. Not going to be started, and that was really frustrating. That was. But yeah, P7, so some points for Haas team. They'll be happy with that, but obviously disappointed of what could have been. Alpha Tauri, Nick De Vries had a poor race, or he just was a battle to the back, to be honest with you. For some reason at the safety car restart, the first one, he went onto the mediums and people were struggling to make the hards work. He was never going to get there in the end on them. And then, I don't know. He just wasn't there, was he, to be honest? And Yuki Tsunoda had a solid race, just couldn't get their car seems really harsh on the tyres. Held off onto P10 for quite a while, but then got passed by Piastri, and then finished, was out of the points, but then after the restart and all the way to case, so he's ended up in P10, so a point for Yuki Tsunoda. I think he deserved that this weekend. He'd had a good weekend. Alfa Romeo, Bottas had a poor weekend to forget. He finished 11th in the end, but he was running at the back of of the race, for most of the race, to be honest with you. It looked like he pitted under the safety car before the red flag for the Magnussen's issue, and then had the red flag. But had he not done that, he might have got a point, but it wasn't the way to be. Hull Zhu got her first point, finished in P9. He had a solid weekend. He out-qualified his teammate, and a good race for him following that. Williams, it looked like what would have been a brilliant weekend for him, especially under the hands of Alex Albon. As I say, he was running in P6 until he dropped it, and he had a really good qualifying session yesterday. Logan Sargent struggled all weekend, and he was coming onto the radio at the end saying how bad the car is and how awful it is to drive, and he got told by his engineer to sort of say, watch your mouth, mate, like, is what it is. But there we go. Now we've got a long break. I think they tried to stretch this race, so because we've got a long break to the next race. We were going to have China in a couple of weeks time, but that's not happening, so there's a 4-week break now before the next race. I think it's in Baku, if that mind serves me right. Someone will correct me in the comments, but let me know your thoughts. What do you think of Sainz's penalty? Was it really too harsh? I think so. And does there need to be a simplified rule for this safety car restart under a red flag in organising the race order? For me, I definitely think so. And was that second red flag really thrown too early? I mean, it surely could have finished under a safety car. But on the weekend where Michael Massey makes his way back into the podium, we've got bizarre scenarios of red flags and safety cars, and it was all chaos, wasn't it? Racetrack had a lot in his hands, but I think he was a little too quick to throw the red flag, especially first one when we had a red flag for gravel, and then a red flag for just a wheel on the circuit, which someone could have easily gone and run out and picked up and taken it off track. They could have probably finished that race with just one lap going to happen. There was not going to be no racing after it, and I think he was a bit trigger happy on that red flag, the second one anyway, or the second or third one. I've lost count, but that was it. Mega crazy Melbourne Grand Prix, worth the wait. Getting up in the morning, I suppose, with all that drama in the end. A lot to unpick. Watch out for my video of the driver ratings to come out next week. But yeah, we'll see you in a couple of weeks time now. We'll actually have some videos to pop up in between that and the next race. But thanks for watching. What a crazy race we've had in Melbourne. Good day, mate.